This is part 4 of Troop 566's Coleman 3-burner liquid fuel stove tutorial, and it is entitled Cooking Tips. Never place a pot, pan, or a griddle on the stove without something in them. Doing that could cause the pot or pan to burn, or a warping or a bending of the utensil, or in some cases melt a hole in it. Trying to melt snow in an aluminum pot without a layer of liquid water in the bottom will often result in a hole in your pot. An exception to this rule is preheating the Coleman box oven accessory, which will be shown later. It is often a good idea to start a pot for boiling water when using the stove. This can be used for warm drinks, more pleasant face washing, and to supply dishwashing water. For example, after we take the last food off the stove and sit down to a meal, we usually place a large pot, like this one, 3/4 full of water and with a lid on the center burner at full power. After eating, we can promptly move into cleanup as the water on the stove is now hot. It is usually desirable to split the hot water into soap tub and rinse tub, as well as cut it with some cold water so no one burns themselves washing dishes. A pair of pliers is a wonderful help when the dishwater is really hot. It takes a lot of energy to boil a pot of water. This is best done on the center burner, not the sides. Once at or near full boil, it can be transferred to one of the fixed heat side burners. A lid on the pot will greatly decrease the time and energy needed to heat the water or any other food for that matter. The green sheet metal of the Coleman stove does a great job of isolating heat from surrounding objects. However, you should never test this design by placing combustible or meltable items next to and especially behind the stove here. The goal of most cooks is to have the entire meal ready at one time. This will take planning about to decide in what order to cook the different parts of the meal. Earlier cooked components need to be kept warm without overcooking them until the rest of the meal is complete or while waiting for the dining audience to be assembled. You can create a warming oven on top of a cooking pot like this one. The best target for this is the top of boiling water. You can place a large frying pan or other pans on top of this pot and then place the lid on top of that pot, and it'll be a perfect place to keep food warm. If you don't have a pot or a pan like this, you can just place the food on top of the lid of a pot. Most camping lids are flat to reduce storage space. Once you place the food here, you can put aluminum foil over the food to keep the food warm. The recyclable nature of aluminum foil can reduce cleanup for messy items. For some greasy items like bacon or sausage, you may wish to place several paper towels in the bottom of your warmer to absorb the excess grease. Two types of griddles are used on a camping stove: square and rectangular. This is a rectangular griddle. The rectangular griddle is more common for larger groups and inexperienced cooks. The square griddle is great for a small group, but care must be taken not to overheat it as it will warp very easily. Young scouts and inexperienced cooks manage to warp the large rectangular griddle as well. The square griddle takes more space than a single burner. However, it is often possible to make use of the adjacent burners. Often griddles do not require high heat and can be placed on a side burner with the excess portion hanging over the end of the stove. The end wing must be folded in for this to work. The rectangular griddle takes two burners, the center burner and one of the end burners. You will most likely need to turn down the main control valve when it's on to lower the flame on the center burner to more closely match the level of the flames on the end burner. Never place a griddle on the stove overheat if you are not immediately ready to place food on it. In the case of a rectangular griddle, you should place the first food over the center burner first. Be sure to favor food over the center burner end of the griddle as it will cook faster because there is more heat there. Coleman makes an accessory for this stove, which we call a box oven, shown here. The box oven is a little larger than the space reserved for a single burner. When used as a baking oven, it can be placed on the center burner so you can use the main control knob to adjust the heat. As a warming oven, it can be placed on a side burner. You can preheat your oven or start it off with food inside. You can bake almost anything, including cakes, muffins, and cookies. Baking successfully at altitude usually requires modification to the recipe compared to sea level. For example, on a cake mix box, you'll often find suggested modifications for altitude. We find it helpful to order a second shelf for the oven from Coleman. Add a couple of 9-inch round baking pans to your camping utensils. To open up the box oven, to use it, you must first unlatch the clips on both ends. There's one at the bottom front, there's one at the back top. Once you unclip these, you can fold it out so it looks more square. Then you take the end that is in the far end of the box oven and bring it down to the bottom of the box. Then you take the end that's on the door and pull it out to the top. Make sure that the tabs on the bottom and top place into the foldable edges of the stove so it locks in well. Once you've done that, you can use those same latches that you used to unlock the box to lock these in place, both there and back here at the bottom. Once you've done all that, you can open the box and place the grill inside. Like so, and close it up. And you lock it with the door, and then you can place this box oven on the stove. When the stove is on high, it is possible for flame to appear at the bottom of the oven, so be careful when using the oven to keep things like bacon or sausage warm. Be sure any paper towels in the warming pan are out of the range of the flame. If the oven becomes too hot, you can simply open the oven door to let out excess heat. The biggest advice we can give is our rule that says the temperature gauge on the oven does not show the current temperature, but shows what it was 5 minutes ago. Besides the temperature reading, you should keep track of the current trend of where the temperature is going up or down. Using these two pieces of knowledge, it'll help you adjust the stove's main control knob to produce the most consistent desired temperature by opening and closing the door. When you remove the oven from the stove, place it in a safe place to cool down on a surface that will neither ignite nor melt. To close the box oven, first need to take out the shelves, close the door, unlatch the hooks that hold the bottom and top in place, here and here. Then you drop down first the top end, then you pull up the bottom end. Once you've done that, you fold the box oven back into place and use the latches to lock the box oven back. You should place the shelf onto the knob of the door to keep it in a steady place and then replace it in its storage compartment. When we need an oven in our troop, we typically use Dutch ovens, however, fueled by charcoal to do most of our baking. This allows us to have full use of our three burners here for our gourmet meals. We also improvise our own warming oven, typically as the top of a double boiler as described earlier. However, when we cook for larger groups of several dozen, we will use several 3-burner stoves and a couple of Coleman box ovens.